Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, where common sense comes first. Did you know that today is Thomas Paine Day, also known as Free Thinkers Day? Talk about timing. For this occasion to fall on a day when we saw a Senate hearing that was the absolute opposite of common sense that Paine pushed for. My mother would say, il destino, it was destiny, that we get to refocus based on one of the great minds and what we saw today. In both parts of his magnum opus, his great work, Rights of Man, written after the American Revolution, Thomas Paine railed against political parties as a threat because of exactly what we keep seeing and what we saw today. That they would seek advantage for the few at the expense of the many. Here we are. As Paine noted, these are the times that try men's souls. My point is not that Bobby Kennedy Jr. should not be scrutinized. He's not a perfect pick for HHS secretary. It's fair to say he's a highly controversial pick. He has said things about the government's COVID response and vaccines and alternate treatments that play great for the fringe thinking sold by some pod people, but these ideas often conflict with science. They warrant scrutiny. But he is the pick of the president, and the president has the exclusive power in the Constitution to nominate cabinet secretaries for a reason. And he has ideas, Mr. Kennedy, that resonate with many in this country about our food and our testing and the role of government, and people backed him and they backed the president for wanting him. He's also a Democrat, and that's a pleasant change from party uber alles. Now, is that what today was about? Not really. Yes, the Senate has a check on the president's power and must offer advice and consent, which has been interpreted to mean they should vet nominees' credentials and their ideas for what they want to do with their position. But that's not what today was about. This was about one party saying the other party sucks worse. And Kennedy was basically the monkey in the middle. On the right, they were just bowing to Trump.
I have found my engagements with you, both behind closed doors in my office, as well as listening to you publicly, to be very thoughtful and science-based. I applaud that. I thank you for that.
I don't know if you remember when you called me up and you were contemplating setting your political differences aside, joining forces with President Trump on an area of agreement, addressing chronic illness, trying to find the root cause of all these problems facing this nation. My first response was, Bobby, this is an answer to my prayers.
I have no doubt that you will be confirmed and you are going to do such a solid job for the people of this country. I look forward to seeing you help make us healthy again.
How? I get that you like him. I get that you're afraid not to like him. But how? Don't just sit there and say, I'm good with him. I'm good with him. Mark me on the list. Their loyalty is supposed to be to you, their constituents. But instead, they're just playing to the head of their party. Both parties do this in these stupid sessions, especially with Supreme Court justices. The whole process is a sham. But today, you got to see it, ugly and obvious. The left were insistent on virtue signaling and showing that they still don't get why they lost.
The receipts show that Mr. Kennedy has embraced conspiracy theories, quacks, charlatans, especially when it comes to the safety and efficacy of vaccines.
Did you say Lyme disease is a highly likely militarily engineered bioweapon?
I probably did say that.
Did you say that?
And that's what the developer of
I
Lyme
want all
disease
of our
said.
colleagues to hear it, Mr. Kennedy. This matters. It doesn't matter what you come here and say that isn't true, that's not reflective of what you really believe, that you haven't said over decade after decade after decade, because unlike other jobs we're confirming around this place, this is a job where it is life and death.
Now, you just said that you want the American people to know you can't be bought. Your decisions won't depend on how much money you could make in the future. Will you also agree that you won't take any compensation from any lawsuits against drug companies while you are secretary and for 4 years afterwards.
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
Health. Look, no one should be fooled here.
I mean, again, the point is, vet his ideas. Go after the conspiracy theories. Why did he say it? Why does he see differently now? God forbid somebody change their position out of something other than convenience. Now, I'm not saying that there wouldn't have been weaknesses, but that's not what they were trying to do, especially Senator Warren. Okay? And look, you know, there have been questions about her, how much money she was worth when she came in. Now she's worth a lot more. How'd that happen? How'd that happen? So, you know, I was there when Elizabeth Warren was first introduced to the national audience. I was at ABC. She was brought in as a fair broker in the recession of 2008 about the bailouts and the big shots and TARP and TALF, and she was great at that. But now she's just playing the game. And here's why I say that. How can she be so angry at Kennedy for parsing a position on something as common as making money after when he's done serving, when she has a history of fudging on a position that actually mattered?
My papa had high cheekbones like all of the Indians do. Being Native American has been part of my story, I guess, since the day I was born. The message I hear from Indian country is one of resilience and hope. Now, before I go any further in this, I want to say this. Like anyone who's being honest with themselves, I know that I have made mistakes. I am sorry for harm I have caused.
Right? Because she was exaggerating. I got high cheekbones too. I'm not Indian. This is why Trump mocked her as Pocahontas, which was classless, by the way. But the point remains. She's no one to come at Kennedy for like kind of saying something and one thing when it worked and then changing it. It's called politics, let alone in this high dudgeon. Have some shame. But of course she won't. Why? Because there's no shame in the game. The senator was going for her moment, and guess what? I just gave it to her. Okay? I just hope the moment stands for what we need less of, because today was more proof that all that matters is what these people do not. Look, here's the truth, okay? Energy is being spent on the wrong things because it's what they've been rewarded for, all right? We already see here early on, we're making the same mistakes again. Everything Trump says, they pick it apart. They pick it apart. What's his motivations? What it's really about. Now, if you just focus on what is done instead of what these people say, everything becomes clear if what you want is to fix. Trump has now had to pull back on halting funding after messing with money for the neediest, Medicaid in different states. Why? It's easier to disrupt than it is to fix for the better. And now he's going to have to explain and likely pull back from halting the observance of MLK Day, which he celebrated on the inauguration day, which fell on the same day, Holocaust Days of Remembrance, Pride Month, other historical annual events. Why? Because the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, had a DEI office called the agency's Special Emphasis Programs. And that office oversaw the observance of these holidays. And now that Trump stopped funding DEI, these have been affected. Oh, but he didn't mean that. But that's the problem with going too fast and trying to make a big deal and focusing on hype instead of what actually helps. Same thing with the J6 pardons. See, if you just let him do things, you'll see what works and what doesn't. There's no reason for all of this noise that only suits the parties, not your interests. Same with the raids, okay? Now, Trump's ICE raids have racked up over 5,500 arrests in the last 7 days. That's good, right? Everybody's celebrating it. It depends. Who did they get? And they're being too closed about the answer to that question. Sure, ICE and the Trump White House put out posters showing the scary immigrants they've arrested, you know, one here, one there, showing the crimes that they've committed. But by the way, we've seen arrests of bad guys in every administration, okay? They're arresting more now, but I don't know that they're arresting a lot more bad guys. They just have higher numbers. Look, in Florida today, local cops caught Chinese traffickers. It happens. I get that it needs to happen more. But it's what you don't see in these ICE arrest numbers that matters too. How many of these migrants were charged or convicted of a violent crime? Is this just rank speculation? No, there's a recent report that found that of the migrants arrested on Sunday by ICE, the number of the arrests greatly increased because Trump was frustrated that numbers were too close to what Biden's numbers were. About half of them had not committed any crimes other than crossing the border. Now, I know that there are some of you who will say, well, that's enough. It's not enough for me. The idea that all illegal entrants are the same, I do not agree. And I think these people matter to communities, to the economy, to the country in ways that are not all negative and are in fact being greatly discounted in the name of law and order. Now, you may disagree with me. That's fine. You must still see we're not a few raids away from a real fix. Same with the idea of sending them to Guantanamo Bay. Again, I get it. Guantanamo Bay, ooh, that's strong, right? Scary place. How many can they hold there? He wants to put 30,000 people there. They just had a report that said the migrant operations there have a capacity of 130. He wants to round up millions, right? Does that really sound like a feasible solution? No, it's hype. Now look, it is good for the president to take steps on common concerns. I'm not criticizing that, but how he does it matters also, and that should be the focus. That should be the obsession, right? Because it's an illusion that Trump can fix immigration alone. He has to get Congress to act on what the people doing the job on the border ask for most. Address both parts of the problem, illegal immigration, which is the easy part, by the way, and legal immigration, which is harder. Why? You've got to have Congress for that. Rule changes on asylum. What is economic distress? What qualifies when it comes to crime? What should be done in home country? How do you set up those deals? They need more resources for staff, to police, to detain, to process, to hold. Doubling or tripling their capacity to hold and deport after they process, as well as finding ways to allow people who are here right now doing the right thing to stay and be protected and be able to pay taxes and contribute, especially dreamers. We are not a wall or a raid away from a system that gives us what we need and protects against allowing what we don't. And the men and women in power would rather fight about who's more to blame for this problem than fix it, even now. Another reason to watch the walk more than the talk is all this drama in the first couple of weeks is a distraction from the main concern. What was the number one election issue for left and right? If you're listening to people now, they're saying immigration. It was important. It was more important than I've seen it in any recent cycle, but it wasn't number one. The economy was, specifically cost of living. And Trump can't wave a wand or sign away prices, and he knows it. That's why he's focusing on this. It's hard, and it takes Congress and time, and that's why he backed away from the quick fix he campaigned on. People can keep telling you that if we drill and pump more, fuel prices are going to come down, and then prices will come down because transportation costs of goods will come down. Do a little research. See how few economists and experts think it's that simple in light of all the other factors that go into prices that Trump ignored during the campaign and now gives credence to when he says bringing down prices is hard. Same with tax cuts. You had more money in your pocket during Trump, right, in the first term. But remember why? It wasn't a tax cut. It was a really robust economy that he got from the Obama administration and the pandemic checks. So, look, he can halt funding. But what he really needs to do is cut spending in areas that matter, not just for culture war issues. Will he? I don't know. We'll see. Let's see what he does and what the effect is. Hype versus help. Thomas Paine called for common sense to blow away the smoke of political party infighting and interests. These are the days that test our souls. Demand action on what matters. Demand better ideas. Let's discuss the state of play, whether Bobby's going to get through, what it means for the other two, and what it tells us about the state of play. For this, two better of minds who do not see the world the same way, but see it well. Author and journalist Bill O'Reilly, host of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A., I don't know if you heard this today because you got 155 jobs, but Bill O'Reilly said, I don't know that Bobby's going to get through it, and I don't think I would vote for him to be confirmed. Bill O'Reilly, do I have it right? And if so, why?
Well, I was wrong about Hegseth, but just by a millisecond, because Tillis, the senator from North Carolina, was going to vote against him, but then they put the arm on him and Tillis shifted, so it was a tie, and Vance broke the tie.
Vance.
On Bobby Kennedy Jr., if he gets confirmed, this will confirm to me that Donald Trump is the most powerful new president in history by a wide margin, because He is not qualified to do this job. And I agree with Kennedy on the nutrition aspect. In fact, if I were the president, I would just appoint him to be Minister of Nutrition, Nutrition Czar, because he's absolutely right. The food is killing this country and leading to medical problems, particularly for elderly people, that are bankrupting us. Kennedy's right on it. But he's a conspiracy guy. He believes what he wants to believe. I know him a little bit. I called him about his father's assassination. He's convinced Saran didn't do it. There are 6 eyewitnesses. It's just ridiculous. But that's what Bobby wants to believe. Lupus, on and on and on and on. So I'm an old school guy. You got to prove yourself to get power. And Bobby Kennedy has not come close to proving himself to me.
Stephen A., the president wants him, though.
Yeah, the president wants him, and I got to tell you, I think Bill is right. If President Trump pulls this off and RFK Jr. gets confirmed, he can make an argument that he's the most powerful president we've seen, arguably, in our lifetime. Because when you look at him up on Capitol Hill, I'm talking about RFK Jr. here, you certainly side with him when it comes to the issues of processed foods. I think that even though he was an anti-vaccine guy, we've seen a plethora of individuals come out in the open and acknowledge that they were anti-vaccine individuals. So it's not that far gone, as at least the way that it once was. Then you saw the Biden administration pardon Anthony Fauci before leaving out of the White House. There are people that will look at that and say there's some level of culpability that may exist because of that action alone. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but certainly people will think that way. But the reason why I'm siding with Bill O'Reilly on this particular instance is because he was up there on Capitol Hill and, he was challenged. He was challenged on issues in regards to abortion. He was challenged on issues in regards to Medicare. He was challenged on the level of consistency that he appeared to lack, along with being a conspiracy theorist. And then he said, I'm going to serve at the pleasure of the president. Well, that's nice for Republicans to co-sign on. They certainly would. But keep in mind, this is a man that is perceived as being a Democrat. He was willing to run as an independent. On the town hall special that you did, Chris Cuomo, with myself, as I had the pleasure of sitting next to the one and only Bill O'Reilly that night, he acknowledged that if the Democrats didn't get in his way and they gave him a fair shot to compete with Biden for the presidency, he would have been a Democrat. And so you have people up on Capitol Hill that's determined to be against him because they view him as a turncoat. You have Trump supporters who want to support him because they know that's what Trump will want. And if he ends up getting confirmed, it will be because of that reason. And if he ends up not getting confirmed, it'll be because there are others that lean towards his inconsistencies and view that as a lack of trust for him to be the head of HHS. And so that's the way that it is. I think Bill O'Reilly is right on point. And I usually don't like saying that, but I must concede when necessary.
Well, listen, I get you guys. I don't agree.
It makes you a better...
We'll take a break. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to tell Stephen that agreeing with me makes you a better person. You see, this isn't just a news program. We're here to elevate your personhood. And when you say Bill O'Reilly is right, that strengthens you in almost every way, Stephen A. So
I don't know.
It's a big win for you
I got to tell you,
far.
Every time I agree with him, I get a rash. I get a rash every time. I've gotten a rash, and it's not easy to get rid of. I got a cream and a pill I can send you, but it's not great. I will tell you, look, I see one part of this completely the reverse, which is if Bobby gets through, I don't think it's because Trump is strong. I just think it's that the fealty system of these parties has become so weak and that these people stand for no principle but advantage. Because, look, either what Bill is saying is right, which is this guy doesn't even come close. Neither did Hegseth. At least this guy has experience suing people in this business on these policy levels. Hegseth didn't even have that. So his credentials are bad, Bill might argue. Okay, yep. So was the other guys, and he got through. But I think that there's one other piece to this that we'll discuss. Let's take a break. There's one other piece, and then I want to get into what it means about how we see what's happening. How is Trump doing in terms of fixing for the country? The hype of it versus how much he's doing to help. Please stay with me. It's great to have you both, as always. The rash, though, Stephen A., it starts like over here. It can come all the way around the back of your neck. It makes things taste funny. I'll tell you about it in the break.
There's a vaccine for that, Cuomo.
I wouldn't know.
No, they're not safe and effective.
There's a vaccine, Cuomo, and Bobby
They're
Kennedy.
not safe and effective.
Yeah, Bobby Kennedy will get it for you.
First, that is a pejorative, Senator, that's applied to me mainly to keep me from asking difficult questions of powerful interests. I was called a conspiracy theorist because I said red dye caused cancer. And now FDA has acknowledged that and banned it.
So I think that when it comes to the conspiracy stuff, as I'm joined again by Bill O'Reilly and Stephen A. Smith, I think one of the biggest obstacles, Bill, and you tell me what your feel is on this from Trump land, and Stephen, you bounce off that Trump doesn't want to be held to the standard of his crazy anymore. He's in legacy mode. And Bobby does drag him into that place. And what I hear from people around Trump that concerns them with senators is he represents in some ways, like the conspiracies, what they like about Trump least. And the question is, do they judge Bobby in a way they can't judge Trump and ding him as a nod to putting down conspiracy crazy?
This might make your rash feel better, but the point that you made in your monologue, which was, I think, about an hour and 20 minutes, was that these senators, they don't really care, all right, about Bobby Kennedy sitting there. Bobby Kennedy is as far away from their sphere of caring as I am or Stephen A. is right. They just don't care. Everybody knows that Donald Trump's White House, his guys, will call all the shots. Bobby Kennedy admitted it in his hearing day. He said, look, whatever they tell me to do, I'm going to do. All right? So he does not have any power. He's not going to be able to do anything unilaterally at all. And so you either vote for him because you don't want to tee off Trump, which most of the Republicans will do, or you hate Trump, most of the Democrats do, so you vote against him. It all comes back to Trump. Everything comes back to him. Bobby Kennedy could be a cardboard cutout there. He doesn't matter to the country. And I'm, as I said, an old school guy. That offends me. I want the best and the brightest, but it's not there. So if I were a senator, I would go, I think we can do better than this, with all due respect. And something that everybody's missing is Caroline Kennedy, which is a fascinating story, if you want to get into that a little while. The two things that people need to take away from this hearing today is it is all a game, as Cuomo says. It's all a game. It's not looking out for you. Trump and Kennedy made a deal. Kennedy said, I will support you, but I'd like some consideration. Trump said, okay. And Trump is a loyal guy. All right? He doesn't host people like most politicians do. You do him a favor, he'll return a favor. That's what happened.
Stephen A.
Guys, it's a joke, fair enough. But who the hell's laughing? It ain't you two. It ain't me. And it's not the American people. Chris Cuomo said it earlier when he talked about how the number one obligation, the number one issue was the economy. This is Donald Trump that we're talking about here. The man, we have to concede, is a master at trying to spin things. He knows that the economy is the number one issue. He also knows that he can't fix that unilaterally. He's going to need an extensive amount of help. The chances of him getting that are going to be very challenging. So what does he do? He focuses on immigration, and he starts talking about all of these people that need to be arrested. Well, there's millions upon millions upon millions of people that crossed the border illegally over the last 4 years. How many people have been detained and sent away? I think that number's at about 1,000. Are all of these people criminals, as Chris Cuomo talked about earlier? Absolutely not. All of them are not criminals. There are immigrants in this country who are not criminals. Most of them are not criminals. The ones that are the criminals, how many of them are you getting? Oh, by the way, look at where you're getting some of these folks from. You could get them in L.A. You could get them in Florida. You could get them a host of other places where you know they've crossed the border illegally and they're causing all types of trouble. But that's not a good look right now because of the wildfires that's taking place in the second largest state in the country, in California. So we take all of those things into consideration. And why do I bring something like that up? Because it's a distraction. It's an evasive maneuver. It's what Donald Trump does very, very well. And the reason I'm not saying that, Bill, at this particular moment in time, in the negative. See, the Democrats tried to do it too. They just weren't very good at it. He's better at it than them. That's really what this comes down to.
All right, let me just jump in for a minute.
Look at these.
Look,
please.
You guys want information tonight, I'll give it to you. The reason that Donald Trump said the words Guantanamo Bay, you want to know the reason? I've been there twice. I reported from there twice. Was because he's being very successful in cutting down the so-called migrant interactions with the Border Patrol. In fact, they're down 60% in 10 days. 6-0. Why? Because they're scared. He's scared the people who wanted to come here. Now he's scaring them more with Guantanamo Bay. That's why he's doing it. Economy. Trump is doing exactly what Ronald Reagan did when he took over in 1981 from Jimmy Carter. Exactly. The executive orders on the fossil fuel and ginning up, making it easier for them to operate, will bring down inflation. But it won't bring it down in 10 days. Whereas Trump can succeed on the immigration front in 10 days, but he's going to need a couple of months on the economic stuff. And that is what is happening.
I disagree about the effect of drilling more. The country's never drilled and pumped out more than it is currently. I think it's more complicated than that, but I do believe that he is trying to avoid it because it's harder. And the scrutiny, instead of just going after Trump because what he is or how Elon Musk signals to the crowd, they should be talking about, hey, he's doing a lot, but it's not helping a lot. He froze funding. He doesn't want to cut spending. He froze funding. And now he's got MLK Day that he's going to have to give back. And then he had Medicaid getting shut down in states, and he had to undo that. You know, people think that action must mean good action, and it doesn't always. And you're seeing that in real time. There's plenty to scrutinize. They just have to scrutinize the right things, and the Democrats just keep missing the ball.
They have to scrutinize the right things. The Democrats you keep dropping the ball in terms of pinpointing exactly what to scrutinize. When you listen to some of the stuff that they were talking about in Capitol Hill with a number of the confirmation or a number of confirmation hearings, some of the things they just reminded you of how tone deaf they are. So we get that part about the left. As it pertains to Trump, I think the important thing to recognize and to remember, just from a common American citizen out here, is this. It all comes back to the money. Even when you're talking immigration, it comes back to the money. Because if you have people crossing the borders illegally, okay, there's more people in this country that need to be taken care of. How do you do that without utilizing taxpayer money? You have to utilize taxpayer money in order to make those things happen, which is why you see the ire just basically fomenting and elevating exponentially when it comes to that, because they're looking at it and they're saying, wait a minute, that's our taxpayer money. We don't have money to take care of the desolate and disenfranchised. We don't have enough money to take care of the elderly in this country, but we got the money to take care of immigrants crossing the border illegally. We got money to throw to Ukraine. We got money to throw all over this world, but we don't have money for the folks right here. That's why he can sit up there and get away with saying America first, America first, America first, and galvanize an enormous amount of people to support him, because in the end, they feel a pinch. They're looking for an excuse, and it's no longer simple enough, and it doesn't suffice enough to just say the government is mishandling things. They're looking for a problem to point to. Trump gives it to them, and as a result, that's why people rally the way that they do for him.
But there's also one other component, Stephen A., that Biden screwed up this country so badly with his policies that are indefensible on immigration and on inflation, the two big ones.
I agree.
That the Democrats have no credibility. They have no credibility. There isn't one Democrat that we can find who objected to the open border policy. Not one. That is stunning.
Well, Bill,
so now the American people tune them out. They're not even listening to them. Look at CNN and MSNBC's ratings.
Right. I'll give you something worse, Bill. You say they have no credibility. It's worse than that. They don't have a voice. Who's the voice?
No
Who
leader.
do you care to hear
leader.
from the Democratic Party? Do you realize at this particular moment in time, you can pick former presidents, you can pick senators, you can pick anybody that you want to. Chris, tell me I'm lying. And I don't mean to, listen, Wes Moore out of Maryland, I think he's a future of the Democratic Party. People should really keep their eyes on him. I think he's fantastic. I loved his prospects. But I'm talking about the people on Capitol Hill. Is there a single solitary voice from the Democratic Party that you care to hear from? You know, they were talking about Kamala Harris possibly running for the gubernatorial seat in California. Do you know what people did when I interviewed them about that? They laughed. And they said, ain't gonna happen. Ain't going to happen. You look at some of the other Democrats on the Hill right now.
Will.
Nobody cares to hear from them. Nobody cares to hear from them. They don't have a voice. The Democratic Party needs a new voice. The voices that they've had, as far as I'm concerned, they're fading into the twilight quicker than you can say you guys' name or my own.
You'll get a new generation. The question is the direction. The good thing about Trump is that he creates opportunities. He's doing a lot of things. There are better ideas to be had. The message matters, but the messenger matters even more in politics. I think the Democrats hopefully will remember that lesson. You know, that used to be their advantage. Other than Reagan, the Democrats used to have
Let's get to the most important. No. Look at what Reagan did with inflation. That's exactly what Trump is doing. So let's get to the real important stuff.
He also tripled
Who's going to win a Super Bowl? Who's going to win a Super Bowl, Stephen A? Who's winning? Come on. Who's winning the Super Bowl?
You don't. Well, first of all, it's not my show. So the fact that I'm going to even answer this question is a testament to you, Bill O'Reilly, because normally I would, and I'd answer it on my own show.
That was a deft move.
So since the list is always fluid, and I reserve the right to change my mind, I would tell you, don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. You don't bet against Patrick Mahomes, but if there was ever a time to do it, it would be this Super Bowl. That's all I'm giving you for the moment.
Stephen A. Smith, you have been talking politics too much. You are a smooth-tongued, non-answer given. You are just like the rest of us. I knew you'd get ruined by this.
No.
I got to save it for ESPN.
He thinks the Chiefs are going to win.
You say the Chiefs win?
What is that?
I got to save it for ESPN, Bill.
That's some foreign network.
I say the Eagles win.
Isn't that some foreign network, ESPN?
Oh, no.
Saquon Barkley gets more than 100
is
yards.
The worldwide leader, and it's the number one show in the mornings for 13 straight years. Yes, with those dudes.
Right on.
Yeah. Just for the record.
Yeah, you'll have four to beat me, but you'll do it. If Saquon Barkley gets more than 100 yards, then Philadelphia will win.
Yes.
You heard it.
Saquon
Write it
Barkley
down.
Will rush.
Learn it.
Now, there's all these qualifications. Only Cuomo gives a straight call. The Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. Okay? There you have it.
Is that emotion talking or football knowledge? Is that emotion talking or football knowledge?
Neither. I don't have great football knowledge, and I feel almost nothing. I'm lucky if I can feel hot and cold.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, I think they're going to win.
There it is. Saquon.
Didn't you say the Bills were going to win developing on Cuomo?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, they did. And they beat the Ravens.
You did say the Bills, right?
And your man, Wes Moore, he didn't even call me after it.
Yeah. I know. He's still hurt. He's recovered.
The refs are why the Bills lost. The refs lost. On instant replay, the Bills won the game.
The Bills are why the Bills
lost. They're going to win on appeal.
Kincaid's got to catch that pass. Kincaid's got to catch that pass.
2 weeks in a row.
Can't drop that pass.
You know what? That's how life works, though, fellas. I got to jump. But 1 week, the Bills won the game because a tight end didn't catch a pass. The next week, they lost the game because a tight end didn't catch a pass. That's how life goes, my brothers.
Bill
O'Reilly,
do me a favor.
Thank you for the sagacity.
Get up early, Bill, and watch First Take. Watch First Take on ESPN, Bill. Watch
First
Take. You'll learn even more about sports.
No, I get confused, though. I get, when you start to talk about Bronny James and stuff, I'm going, what? What is he saying? So, but no, I understand.
I don't get confused. I don't get confused. Stephen A. has an ever-expanding empire, and I'm glad to be part of it.
He does. But I wouldn't be going to the Laker game, Stephen A. You're going to get trashed if you go in there. They're going to beat you up.
Oh, please.
So you be careful. Take me with you, and everything will be okay.
They love me in L.A. They love me in L.A. I'll be just fine.
Of course they do. Look at the look. Look at the look you got right now. You're straight out of there. I mean, the guy's got no weakness in his game. He's got no weakness. Stephen A., thank you very much. Bill O'Reilly, always a pleasure. We're going to have calls later in the show. So you're listening to the Better Minds What are they missing? What do they see the way you see it, etc.? You can call in. We'll talk about it. Now, 4 minutes and 30 seconds from now, one of the leading voices in medicine is Dr. Mark Hyman, okay? Friend of mine, has helped me understand things better about long COVID and wellness. He says he is no conspiracy theorist. He knows Bobby, and he believes there is a case to be made. Caroline Kennedy called her cousin a predator. We have somebody who knows the Kennedy clan, and I'm sure he's never seen anything like this. What does he believe the net effect was from a historical perspective?
Has been nominated by President Trump to be Secretary of Health and Human Services, a position that would put him in charge of the health of the American people. I feel an obligation to speak out. Agencies that are charged with protecting the most vulnerable among us is an enormous responsibility and one that Bobby is unqualified to fill. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator.
Cold-blooded, man. Never seen anything like it, let alone from the Kennedys. Now, I don't know. I know Caroline. I don't know her that well. I have to assume she's speaking her conscience. The question is, does it matter, or is this just more of a commentary on the state of the Kennedy clan? Okay? Let's discuss this. I got two great pieces of perspective for you here. One from somebody who understands the medicine involved and what we need from HHS, and the other who understands the Kennedys and what kind of dynamics usually play out in these confirmations. So you got Dr. Mark Hyman, worked alongside Bobby, and presidential historian Douglas Brinkley, who's known the Kennedy clan most of their lives. Douglas, how you doing? Dr. Mark, always a pleasure. Good to see you both. Doug, I start with you. Do you believe, first of all, have you ever seen a scrutiny dynamic like the one swirling around Bobby Kennedy right now? And what do you think the determining factor will be in his fate?
You know, when I see RFK Jr., I recall when Rachel Carson back in the 60s had to testify about pesticides, DDT. And it was a seminal moment for RFK Jr. This idea that the government is allowing poisons and pesticides to get into our bodies and destroy the bald eagle and other animals. And it was really a motivation for RFK Jr. to become the environmental lawyer that he became. And then he evolved into this public health role. And as you know, because you know him well too, he's a very driven, tenacious, almost Wolverine, fierce opponent when he wants to be. And he got on this yellow brick road of the anti-vax world. Although he's not a pure anti-vaxxer, he certainly congregates with them and encourages them. And so this is a clash over really science and public health, and he's the spear tip now. And what's warped everybody's mind is, how did Bobby Kennedy Jr. could become close with Donald Trump? And the answer is power. The answer is what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, when Trump was bleeding. And at that moment, Trump got the two most useful surrogates, Bobby Kennedy Jr. and his independent movie, and Elon Musk. And as Bill O'Reilly just said, Trump likes to be loyal to people that are back him when he's in a crunch position. Hence, we're having this confirmation explosion on screen, and Caroline Kennedy, former ambassador to Australia, Japan, give those remarkable remarks.
Yeah. So, look, on the political side, Bobby's controversial, but so is the president who picked him in terms of conspiracies and eccentricities. What's a harder sell, I think, for a few of the senators, Dr. Hyman, is he doesn't understand the science or the role of it. And, yeah, he's right about food and what's in it, but everybody knows that. And HHS is a much bigger job, and he's not up to it. What is your perspective on that?
Well, I thanks, Chris, for having me. I think this is a historic moment. You know, we need to address the chronic disease epidemic that's crippling America, that's driving up healthcare costs to what I think $4.9 trillion. 40% of that's paid by the government, almost $2 trillion. We're seeing our children suffering like we've never seen before. 38% of teenagers are now pre-diabetic. This didn't exist when I graduated from medical school. We are facing a national security crisis because our members of our youth are unfit to fight. 77% get rejected. Globally competitiveness, we're being threatened because of the chronic disease epidemic, because kids are 31st out of 37 countries in math. So we have a crisis. And never before in a presidential race, nor in an administration, has anyone taken on the burden of addressing our chronic disease epidemic and all that goes with it. Now, you may not agree with all of his policies, you may not agree with all his views, but I know him, and he is not anti-vax. He is clearly pro-science, and he's got a very ample and nimble mind that is able to actually sort through and look through the data. And I've been deep in these conversations with him. So I think people have a lot of misunderstanding about it. I think he tried to clarify that in hearings today. But I think we have to sort of understand that we're in this moment that we cannot miss, which is finally, and I've been shouting from the rooftops for 30 years, finally, we have this moment where the nation can face this problem together and try to solve the problem of chronic disease together.
Douglas, are we mistaking goals, priorities, wants with the realities of what this job is and what Bobby would be able to do, especially when one of the things he said today was that, look, I'm going to do what the president tells me to do. So is there a belief in your mind that he can achieve anything ambitious?
Well, he's going to have to fold in, which he has with Make America Great or Make America Healthier Again or whatever you want to call it. He's desperate to get confirmed now. Bobby Kennedy Jr. has been a long haul of campaigning, and it's maybe down to one senator, Senator Cassidy, Dr. Dew in Louisiana, or two senators. So it's tight, and he's trying to just get through this process. But I believe he'll want some scalps once he gets in, meaning Dr. Fauci got a pardon, but he will go after a company or two to send a wider message. And the Trump machine, MAGA, will approve of him targeting one or two people to send a broad-based message. A larger question that came up today, does RFK Jr. know how to deal with the budget of $1.7 trillion? He seemed to botch Medicaid and Medicare and all today. So there are people that don't think he's up for prime time for a job like this, although he's been a powerful activist, which is different than actually working in government and following the letter of the law.
So, Mark, you smile and you say he's not an anti-vaxxer. The problem is that he sure sounded like one. And it's not a coincidence that one of the people sitting behind him right now over his shoulder is Megyn Kelly. He has played to these pod people and their extreme ideas and conspiracies and wanting to expose that everything is a lie and government is always bad. He played that game. The question is why and to what extent is that him or is this him?
Well, I think it's complicated. If you really look honestly, and I wrote a book called Food Fix about how to save our health, our economy, our communities, on our planet one bite at a time, where I did expose in an investigative journalistic way the nefarious ways in which the food industry and the farm industry and the ag industry undermine public health. And the World Health Organization has actually now come out with reports on the commercial determinants of health, which is how multinational and transnational corporations subvert public health and privatize profits. And that's what Bobby's talking about. It's not, burn down the house, everything's wrong, but there is something rotten in Denmark, and we have to fix it. We have to address it. And I think it's very insidious, it's very pervasive, and it goes across every sector of society, from who funds research. I mean, there's 12 times as much nutrition research funded by the food industry as there is by nonprofits or the government. They fund the professional associations like the American Heart Association. They fund front groups like the American Council on Science and Health, which is a bunch of criminals, to propagate propaganda that completely is false. They also fund even social groups like NAACP, so they'll oppose soda taxes. So they are in every tentacle trying to subvert public health. And I think that they need to be held to account. They need to be brought into the conversation. They need to be actually encouraged to do the right thing. And I think this administration might have a chance. I don't know if they can succeed. It's a lot at stake here, but this is existential for our country. If we don't address our chronic disease epidemic, it's going to cripple us both from a social perspective as well as an economic perspective.
I keep telling people who are worried about the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, AI coming up with vaccines. I said, if people are greatly overestimating, I'll let you guys go with this thought. The idea of Bobby going after the COVID vaccine makes no sense if only because Trump created it. And the idea that Operation Warp Speed will be brought under great scrutiny when the guy who made sure that it could be expedited, even if that meant cutting corners, is his boss. So I don't think that's going to be his focus. I get why people are worried about it. But if he can achieve any of these ambitions and make that case tomorrow, that that's what it's really about, not what I was, but what I can be, then this is going to be a very interesting vote. Douglas Brinkley, thank you very much. Appreciate it as always. Dr. Hyman, it is good to see you, my brother. It's been too long. I'll talk to you both again soon. 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Coming up, Trump reversed course for the first time that he's here. Why? Because he overreached. Hype is easier than doing things that actually help. I'm going to freeze all the funding. Oh, yeah? And then you screw up Medicaid in states. Oh, okay, we'll undo that. And now you have that they're screwing with different holidays and the idea of bringing down DEI. Oh, no, we'll stop that too. Come on. What needs to happen to get this country to a better place? Let's get out of the party culture and mentality and talk to somebody whose life has been dedicated to understanding how things become better. Tony Robbins. And Dusty says the calls are flooding, and not just for her fashion advice, so I will take them as part of this 2-hour edition of Cuomo. What a creative title.
As was explicitly stated, this in no way affected Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, or other entitlements that Americans depend on. I've made abundantly clear Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid have not been affected by any action we're taking in any way, shape, or form.
Except it was, right? Then states said they couldn't log in, and then it was restored. Now, the question is, do you jump all over Trump for being a liar? No. Why? Because either he didn't know what he was talking about, or even if he was trying to fudge the reality, where does that get you? See, that is the burden for Democrats. That is, frankly, the burden for the media. How do you best cover this administration in a way that reflects what should be our true ambition, which is getting things to a better place? Joining me now is one of the Democrats who has to answer that problem. Illinois member of Congress, Raja Krishnamurthy, who called the freeze illegal and chaotic. It is good to have you right now.